We are honored to be joined right at the top here by Energy Secretary Chris Wright, who is a man that is in the middle of a lot of the news that's happening, especially when it comes to Venezuela. Sludgy crude, a new term that I learned this morning preparing for this interview. Secretary Wright, welcome to the show.
Andrew, thanks for having me. An honor to be on the Charlie Kirk Show.
Yeah, it's an honor. I got to meet you recently in person on a visit to D.C., so it's an honor to have you here. I was struck, by the way, when we met, just your enthusiasm and your energy. I mean, no pun intended, but just for this topic and all the great work that you're doing on the domestic side. And so I was not shocked because you strike me as a guy that has pretty much boundless enthusiasm, energy, and bandwidth. And so I was not shocked when I saw that President Trump put you and added to your portfolio the issue of Venezuelan oil. So a lot of people, there's a lot of confusion about how much they produce, how much they can produce, what is America's role. And now that you're in charge of kind of overseeing this project, please give us the breadth and depth of this situation as it stands.
You bet. Look, it's an honor. I think this issue of Venezuela, it's sort of a perfect illustration of President Trump's broader agenda, which is prosperity at home here in America and peace abroad, because they always tied together. And in this case, they're deeply tied together. Venezuela was a giant oil producer 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. American companies, American investment, American technology. And then they've collapsed under a socialist, communist, top-down, corrupt dictatorship that just ruined the country. And let's come back to Venezuela in a second. But for the United States, that shrinking oil going out means less oil on the market. On balance, it means higher oil prices. It means more refugees forced out of the country. It means they've gone into drug dealing and arms dealing and human trafficking to make money and fund their government, all of which has brought grave negative consequences to the United States and the whole Western Hemisphere. So President Trump looks at this and says, we got to stop this immigration of drugs and people and guns in support for the adversaries of the United States, Iran and Russia and other terrorist organizations in Venezuela. This is hurting America. We've got to fix that problem. But it's not troops on the ground. We're not invading Venezuela. But the last 25 years of pressure as Venezuela has just gone down the tube haven't worked. President Trump was creative and thoughtful. How do we do this? How do we use energy and commerce to reform the state of Venezuela? So I'm thrilled with what he's done, arresting someone that President Biden had a $15 million bounty on the head of Nicolas Maduro. It is not controversial. This guy has run a narco-terrorist state. That guy is now in custody with his wife, facing trial. And we're using the leverage over energy sales to get the existing interim authorities in Venezuela to work with the United States to pivot that country in a better direction. A better direction reduces crime, reduces drug dealing, reduces stressors on the American economy, and ultimately can bring prosperity, which is what capitalism and freedom brings, back to Venezuela. And it can bring lower energy prices and enormous business opportunities for Americans.
Yeah, and I think we definitely agree with you on the opportunity. I see the opportunity. I have so many questions, though. There's questions about, how much oil is there in Venezuela, right? There's allegations that
was great. It was, people pointed out that they're saying is it the most oil in the world, but then that goes back to OPEC, and OPEC goes on national estimates, and in theory, Venezuela was exaggerating.
Yeah.
Do we have any hard knowledge on that, Secretary?
Oh, we do. Look, American companies have been on the ground in Venezuela for over 100 years. So that 300 billion barrels of proved reserve, it's actually a credible number. But when you hear these numbers, understand all of them are wild underestimates of the actual oil in the ground. The United States' reserves today are about 50 billion barrels of oil, so only a sixth of Venezuela. But we produce 20 times as much crude oil, and United States reserves today are the highest they've ever been. So if it really was your total underground, well, we've been producing oil for 150 years. Why isn't our number going down? Our number's going up. So, it's a narrow measure of, with today's technology and at today's price, how much oil could you lift out of the ground that we know about right now? So Venezuela's reserves are immense. That is very real.
So,
but you can't, that oil underground doesn't mean anything. You need technology, capital, and rule of law to get it out. But that's what America's aiming to bring back.
So I read that you've met with ConocoPhillips, Chevron, ExxonMobil. Now, these were oil fields, infrastructure that were owned by American companies. Previously, they were expropriated by Hugo Chavez and Maduro. I've also read that the revenue from oil sales will go into American-controlled accounts. How does that work? So you sell some oil from Venezuela, you got a buyer, the money goes into an account. What happens then?
See, normally, before they shipped tankers around the world, even though we had sanctions on them, the Biden administration and too many others don't enforce those sanctions. So that oil goes out. It was mostly going to China, and Cuba and other not Class A actors in the world.
Sure.
And then that money was flowing into Venezuela. Some of it was going to the government. Some of it was going to corrupt people. That corruption is centered around the raising of that money. What's happening? Then we put a blockade around, said you can't sell oil to the world. Well, Venezuela can't survive long without selling oil to the world. Drug Enforcement Agency, with the help of the Department of War, extracted Maduro and his wife out of the country, and we just began a dialogue with them. Do you want to sell oil? Well, of course they want to sell oil. We said, well, look, this is how we're going to sell oil. We're going to let the tankers go out. We'll market that oil. We'll actually get a better price and more secure payment, much more than they could. And we'll put that money into an account, and we'll bring that money back to Venezuela. But it gives us the leverage to change their behavior, to stop their destructive activity for America and Americans, and steer their policies in a better direction, with the ultimate goal to lead to a representative government in Venezuela, restore freedom, democracy, and prosperity.
So it is a giant geopolitical chessboard here that we're moving around. And so the question is, does that money then get shared directly with, the Venezuelan companies, or are American companies going to come back in and they're going to be profit sharing? I think that's the question. And then are they ready to make that investment once again, Mr. Secretary?
So look, Chevron is still in the country, and there's little changes we can make that can allow Chevron to expand their production. But what will bring American oil companies back, and believe me, there are tons of them that are very anxious to come back, is just to believe that the rule of law will be respected and that the commercial agreements they can make are in the best interest of their country. Venezuelan government owes lots of them billions of dollars. So yes, there's an ugly history here. But our belief is, and I think these companies share that belief, is that with President Trump's leadership and the leverage we have today, we can move things forward in Venezuela so it's once again a profitable place for American businesses to go. Because, of course, both sides win. If the oil companies make money, they're going to produce more oil. A lot of the revenue from that oil production goes into the government of Venezuela, but it also goes into the paychecks and economies of the country as a whole.
Mr. Secretary,
Venezuela 50 years ago was one of the wealthiest per capita nations in the world, and they've just collapsed.
Let's go for a few more minutes. In just 1 second, I've got to take a quick break. More with Secretary Wright in just a sec. All right, Mr. Secretary, I didn't want to cut you off because, like I said, I've met you in person, and I know you have so much. I was blown away just on a more personal level, just how much insight you have about so many different areas, and I think you have been doing a tremendous job at the Department of Energy. And you guys, by the way, your portfolio, people don't understand how large the portfolio is at the Department of Energy. You guys have a lot of different avenues and projects that you work on that people wouldn't necessarily
The nuclear
assume.
arsenal.
What's that?
The nuclear arsenal.
Nuclear arsenal.
Manage that.
Yeah. By the way, are you pro-nuclear, Mr. Secretary?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I went to college to work on nuclear energy, and it was a 17-year-old kid. So, yes, we want to launch a nuclear renaissance. We are also the designers and constructors of the nuclear weapons arsenal for the United States, the nuclear engines that power our submarines and aircraft carriers, and maybe least known, the 17 national labs, which are the greatest Nobel Prize winning factories on planet Earth, and that are the anchor of our Genesis AI mission that we're launching in the country. So you're right. The Department of Energy is sort of broadly national security, science, engineering, and energy.
Yeah, and now geopolitics. Well, I mean, I think probably always geopolitics. So we're getting these, I don't want to keep, I know you got an out here, but we saw this GDP number get revised up where, we're seeing numbers like 4.3, 4.9. How much of the success of the Trump administration economically starts with you and the energy policies that the president has outlined?
Well, look, energy is, I call it the infrastructure. It's the basic plumbing of any economy. If you get energy wrong, nothing else matters. If you get energy right, you've just got a land of opportunity. Manufacturing will return there. You can win an AI race, for example, versus China. So yeah, energy is pretty foundational on that. And regulatory reform, which is all the departments are working on that. We got to make it so you can build big things in America again and invest in our country.
No,
I think president's leadership is...
You're so correct on that one. Just everything comes from energy. Like if you just look at the Industrial Revolution, all the Industrial Revolution was you increased access to the energy to do work. And every step where we've taken a big leap forward technologically has just been more and cheaper energy. And the path of decline is deciding, we need to reduce our energy usage, cap it, reduce it.
And can I keep you for 5 more minutes, Mr. Secretary? Do you have time?
You bet. And that comment was just made was spot on.
Yeah. All right. 1 second. More with Secretary Wright. Mr. Secretary, we were just making the comment in the break that, the Industrial Revolution was sparked. Blake made an apt observation by access to cheaper and better energy sources. You have done a breakdown between red states and blue states. And I know we're getting a little off the Venezuela oil topic here, but how stark is the difference in energy policy and then prices between red states and blue states?
Yeah, so I don't know how many people would love a little more than a 50% increase in their electricity prices, but that's the difference between blue states. If you average across all the blue states and you average across all the red states, blue states are over 50% higher electricity prices. And that's not bad luck. Those are just political choices. Back to this energy thing, restrictive policies that make energy more expensive. Somehow blue states think that's virtuous, but in reality, it's just impoverishing for citizens, and it's just a dissuasion for businesses to want to locate there, which is why there's continual migration from blue high energy price states to red low energy price pro-freedom states.
Yeah, I'm looking at a chart right here. So they measure power costs in kilowatt hours. It's kind of like a common measure of energy. And Texas, 12 cents per kilowatt hour. Florida, 13 cents per kilowatt hour. California, 30 cents per kilowatt hour. So that's 3 times as much electricity. That affects, your home power bill. But imagine you're running a factory. Imagine you are making something. Those can take a ton of energy.
Small businesses,
and
even, though.
It's even worse in Europe. The reason factories are leaving Europe, UK can't make anything, Germany is unable to make things anymore, is they've made their electricity prices too high, and you can't run a power plant. You can't run a plant.
I'm certain the Secretary has strong opinions on this because I've seen some of the reporting on your critiques of European energy policy, Mr. Secretary.
No, you're right on. If you make energy more expensive, they did it saying they were fighting climate change. If you look at the data on emissions, they didn't do anything in that regard. But when they made energy more expensive, they just exported their industry. They all these factories, Germany and United Kingdom, these are the birthplaces of the Industrial Revolution. They just sent all their industry to China and elsewhere in Asia. And if you look at after the financial crisis, that's when there was a huge pivot in energy policy.